Can you spare $5? The words broke the quiet hum of the cafe, drawing every eye to the man standing in front of Leonardo DiCaprio's table. He was nervous, his voice cracking as he spoke. A single father struggling to make ends meet. He needed the money to buy lunch for his son. Leonardo DiCaprio looked up from his phone, calm but focused. "No," he said firmly, the single word hitting harder than anyone expected. The man blinked in shock, his face reddening with humiliation. "Why?" he stammered. DiCaprio leaned back, his tone unwavering. "Because help doesn't mean anything if it's not earned," he replied. The cafe fell into a stunned silence. Customers exchanged glances and whispered as they processed what had just happened. A few shook their heads, muttering about arrogance. "A superstar can't spare $5, one person hissed under their breath, while others defended him, nodding at his words as if they carried some deeper meaning. The man stood frozen, grappling with a mix of embarrassment and frustration. His hands were clenched at his sides as he looked down at DiCaprio, who was already glancing back at his phone, as if the exchange were over. But it wasn't over, not for the man and certainly not for everyone else watching. "Unbelievable," someone whispered. With all that fame and fortune, he couldn't even help a guy feed his kid. As the tension in the cafe rose, Leonardo DiCaprio remained composed, his face unreadable. Was this heartlessness, or was there something else behind his refusal? The man took a shaky step back, defeated. But before he could leave, DiCaprio looked up again, his gaze sharp. "Wait," he said. The entire room froze. "What are you going to do now?" "Wait," Leonardo DiCaprio said, his voice cutting through the whispers. The single father stopped in his tracks, unsure whether to turn back or keep walking. DiCaprio motioned toward the seat across from him. "Sit down." The man hesitated, the weight of embarrassment still heavy on his shoulders. "I just needed $5, he muttered, his tone laced with frustration. "I heard you," DiCaprio replied, his gaze steady. "Now sit." Slowly, the man obeyed, sinking into the chair with an air of defeat. His hands trembled as he gripped the edge of the table. DiCaprio leaned forward, folding his hands. "Tell me something," he said. "Why are you here asking for help instead of finding a way to earn it?" The man's face flushed with a mix of anger and shame. "Do you think I haven't tried?" he snapped, his voice rising. "I've applied for jobs, worked any shifts I could get, but it's never enough. Today, I'm out of options. My son is hungry, and I thought someone like you might understand." DiCaprio didn't flinch. "I do understand," he said, his tone cool yet compassionate. "I've been at rock bottom too." The man froze, confusion etched on his face. "What? You, Leonardo DiCaprio, you're one of the most celebrated actors in the world. How could you possibly understand?" DiCaprio exhaled deeply, his eyes briefly drifting to the window. "I faced hard times too. I've lived with little and struggled to find my footing before I made it, not by asking for handouts, but by fighting for every opportunity." A murmur rippled through the cafe as onlookers leaned in closer, captivated by the unfolding scene. The man's expression softened slightly, though his frustration remained. "That's easy for you to say now," he said. "You had the fame, the connections, I had nothing." DiCaprio interrupted, his voice firm. "Just an idea and the will to make it work. The difference between then and now is that I didn't give up, and I won't help anyone who isn't willing to fight for themselves." The man stared at him, his jaw tightening. "So you're saying I don't deserve help because I'm struggling? I'm not worth your time?" "That's not what I'm saying at all," DiCaprio replied. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a sleek, black wallet. The crowd watched in stunned silence as he extracted a business card and slid it across the table. "Here's what I'll do. Tomorrow morning, come to Appian Way Productions. Ask for me. If you're serious about changing your situation, I'll offer you an opportunity that's worth far more than $5. The man blinked, his anger giving way to confusion. "An opportunity? What kind of opportunity?" "You'll find out tomorrow," DiCaprio said, leaning back in his chair. "But I'll warn you, it won't be easy. It'll require effort, resilience, and a willingness to learn. If you're not up for that, don't bother showing up." The tension in the cafe shifted as the weight of DiCaprio's words settled over the room. The man picked up the card, staring at it as if it were a lifeline. He glanced back at DiCaprio, his expression a mix of gratitude and skepticism. "I'll be there," he said quietly. Good, DiCaprio replied, his tone final. Then we'll see what you're really made of. As the man walked out clutching the card like a lifeline, the whispers in the cafe grew louder. Some called DiCaprio arrogant, others praised his unconventional approach, but one thing was clear, this story was far from over. The next morning, the single father stood outside the sleek headquarters of Appian Way Productions, staring up at the imposing glass building, clutching Leonardo DiCaprio's business card tightly in his hand. He swallowed hard. This wasn't where he thought he'd be. Less than 24 hours after being humiliated in a cafe, he took a deep breath and stepped inside the lobby, a space buzzing with energy where employees hurried between creative meetings, the pulse of innovation and art palpable in the air. A receptionist greeted him with a professional smile. "How can I help you?" He hesitated, feeling out of place. "I am here to see Leonardo DiCaprio," he said, holding up the card as proof. Her expression flickered with surprise, but she quickly recovered. "Of course," she said. "Please wait here." Minutes later, a member of DiCaprio's team approached, motioning for him to follow. They wound through corridors lined with movie posters and state-of-the-art editing suites, past sound stages where directors and crew worked on projects the man couldn't even begin to fathom. His heart pounded with every step. What was he walking into? Finally, they entered a spacious conference room where Leonardo DiCaprio sat at the head of a long table. He didn't look up immediately. Instead, he scribbled something in a notebook. When he did, his expression was neutral, unreadable. "You showed up," DiCaprio said, closing his notebook. The man nodded, his throat dry. "You said to come if I was serious. And are you?" DiCaprio's gaze was piercing, cutting through any lingering doubt. "Yes," the man replied, his voice stronger than he expected. DiCaprio leaned back, studying him. "Good. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you a challenge. Something my creative team is wrestling with. It's not glamorous, and it's not easy, but it's real. I don't care if you have formal training or experience. What matters is whether you can think creatively, adapt, and find solutions. If you can do that, we'll talk about what comes next." The man blinked, caught off guard. "A challenge? What kind of challenge?" DiCaprio gestured to a whiteboard covered in sketches and production notes. "This," he said simply, "is a bottleneck in our film production process. I want you to come up with a way to streamline our creative workflow." The man stared at the whiteboard, the complexity of the challenge sinking in. "I'm not a filmmaker," he stammered. "Good," DiCaprio said with a faint smile. "Sometimes the best solutions come from fresh perspectives. You have until the end of the day." A tablet was placed in front of him, loaded with project details and creative tools. DiCaprio's team left him alone in the room, the weight of the task pressing down on him. For hours, he pored over the information, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of it. Doubts crept in. What if he failed? What if this was a cruel test designed to prove he wasn't cut out for this world? But as the hours ticked by, something shifted. He remembered DiCaprio's words, "Help isn't meaningful unless it's earned." The thought ignited a spark of determination. He began piecing together ideas, drawing on his own experiences, lessons learned from working odd jobs and surviving tough times. By the time DiCaprio returned, the man had a proposal ready. He explained it nervously, stumbling over his words but pushing through. DiCaprio listened intently, occasionally nodding, his expression unreadable. When the man finished, he braced himself for criticism. Instead, DiCaprio smiled faintly. "It's not perfect," he said, "but it's a start. And more importantly, it shows me you're willing to think differently." Relief flooded the man, but DiCaprio wasn't done. "Come back tomorrow," he said. "We'll see what else you can do." The man left Appian Way Productions that day exhausted but exhilarated. For the first time in years, he felt like he had a shot not just at surviving, but at rebuilding his life. Word of the encounter began to spread, first among the production crew and then beyond. Someone from the cafe had taken a video of the initial exchange and uploaded it online, sparking a wildfire of opinions. Some criticized DiCaprio, calling him cold-hearted, while others praised his approach as a tough but empowering form of help. By the time the single father returned to Appian Way Productions the next day, the story had already gone viral. Cameras and reporters crowded the entrance, shouting questions as he pushed his way through. Inside, DiCaprio was unfazed. He greeted the man with the same calm demeanor as before. "Welcome back," he said simply. The day's challenge was even more demanding. a hands-on exercise in the film production studio. DiCaprio wanted to see if the man's ideas could translate into real improvements on set. He worked alongside seasoned crew members and creatives, feeling both out of place and deeply inspired. Though he stumbled several times, his determination impressed the team. Over the next few days, the father's story became a sensation. Social media lit up with debates about DiCaprio's philosophy. Was it fair? Was it genius? Articles dissected every angle, while millions shared their opinions in comments and posts. Meanwhile, the father made steady progress. Each small victory on set boosted his confidence, and he began to feel part of something bigger. He wasn't just solving a problem. He was proving to himself that he could rise above his circumstances. At the end of the week, DiCaprio called him into his office. "You've done well," DiCaprio said, leaning forward. "You showed resilience, and that's exactly what I look for. If you're willing, I'd like to offer you a position here at Appian Way Productions." The man was stunned. Tears welled in his eyes as he nodded. "Yes," he said. "Thank you for giving me this chance." "It's not about me," DiCaprio replied. "It's about what you do with it. Don't waste it." The father left that day with a new job, a renewed sense of purpose, and the knowledge that sometimes the hardest tests lead to the greatest opportunities. As the story continued to spread, the single father's transformation became a symbol of resilience and second chances. Weeks turned into months, and under the mentorship programs at Appian Way Productions, he thrived. He started in an entry-level role but quickly gained new skills, moving up within the company. The online world remained divided. Critics called DiCaprio's actions a publicity stunt, while supporters hailed it as a revolutionary approach to empowerment. In an exclusive interview, DiCaprio finally addressed the controversy. "Handouts don't solve problems," he explained. "They often create dependency. Real help empowers people to help themselves." That's what this was about. For the father, the experience was far more personal. In his first public statement, he reflected on the café encounter that changed his life. "I was angry when Leonardo said no," he admitted. "But that refusal pushed me to prove myself, and I'll always be grateful for that chance." The ripple effect did not stop there. Inspired by DiCaprio's philosophy, other influential figures began exploring ways to implement earned philanthropy initiatives, programs designed to teach, mentor, and empower struggling individuals across various fields. As for the father, he became an advocate for the very program that helped him. Speaking to new participants, he shared his story, urging them to embrace the challenges ahead. "Your future doesn't depend on where you start," he said, "but on how hard you're willing to fight for it."